All right, good evening, everyone. The study session of November 9th, 2021 is called to order. Donna, can you do the roll call, please?
Yes, I will. Councilmember Nesco.
Here.
Councilmember Feast.
Here.
Councilmember McDowell.
Present.
Mayor Dorsey.
Here.
Councilmember Bode. I don't see him. Deputy Mayor Peterson.
Here.
And Councilmember Schmidt is just joining.
Here.
There he is. So it looks like everyone's here except for Councilmember Bode.
All right. Does somebody want to, do we have to excuse him?
Not for a study session, sir,
Okay.
but I can give him a call real quick while, if you want to introduce Troy and he can get started, I'll
Sure.
give him a call.
Yeah. Our first study item is legislative priorities. City Manager Jeff and Mr. Troy Nichols from Phillips and Burgess have information for us. Welcome, Troy.
Good to see you, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council. It's great to be with you tonight. I wish we could be there in person, but that's okay. We're all living with the circumstances we're under. I talked with Jeff a little bit earlier, and I think we'll just kind of go recap a little bit from last session and some of the wins that we had in the budget process, and then go through kind of the session dynamics that I think we're going to be facing in 2022, which is just around the corner. Talk a little bit about the budget process and what we have in bonding capacity for the state and prospects for projects. And then I think I'll turn it back over to Jeff and we'll talk about some of the potential projects that we can pursue in the supplemental budget in the 2022 session, if that's all right with you folks.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so just, looking back in 2021, we actually had a really successful and positive session, just in sheer dollar amounts and the size of the projects we were successful in getting funded. I think we had a really successful session by any measure, and a lot of that is attributable to our delegation. The members of the 35th Legislative District obviously work well together and have unanimity in terms of their listening to their constituents and their priorities, and we couldn't be as successful without their assistance as we have been over the last several years, frankly, and they do a good job representing us. Also, just all the credit in the world to Jeff and the team there on the city staff. A big part of our success last session was being prepared for when the funding did come through, having our projects lined up and vetted and ready to go. As you recall, with the ARPA funds that came down from the federal government, we were ready to roll with our two water-related projects, the Well 1 water main and the reclaimed water tank projects, both at a little over $2 million. Again, it was successful, but we wouldn't have been successful if we didn't have our ducks in a row to seize that funding when it came through, and we made that list. So big accomplishments there. And then the other big success, I take a little bit of personal pride in, just because it was such a unique project. And we made a run at it in 2020. Had a governor's line item veto, which is a first for me. I've never had a line item veto of a budget item before, on the latecomer agreement with the Washington State Patrol. But we came back at it last session and worked with the governor's staff to get something that the governor and his team could live with, and basically did a transfer from the waste tire removal account of $2.2 million to satisfy the terms of that agreement. And we're able to lift that burden off the city out in our UGA across the highway. And I think, Jeff, if I'm not mistaken, we have, as of last week, didn't you folks approve the language changes? And I think we've satisfied the terms of all of it. So.
Yep, council did. Very happy to get that done. Now we go through the tedious process of recording those against each parcel, but that'll happen this time.
that list is very long. I have a PDF of it. It crashes my laptop sometimes when I pull it up, but no, I look forward to the ribbon cuttings out there for all of the development that's going to go in. It's really actually an exciting accomplishment. I'm very proud of that one, and you guys all did a great job supporting us on that. So heading into 2022, so the session starts January 10th, I believe. It's the second Monday of the month. It's a short 60-day session, which is generally reserved for minor tweaks of policy and also tweaks of the budget. The legislature revisits the budgets that they pass, transportation, operating, and capital, in a short 60-day session. So it's not a time, obviously, for major policy revisions or major budgeting changes. However, I've seen both in my time working in the Washington State Legislature. They don't always adhere to that short supplemental mindset. But I think what we're going to see, the Senate has released plans for operating next session. As you know, in 2021, we had an all virtual session. So I sat in this chair for the vast majority of those 105 days, watching things on TV like all of you did, sending emails and making phone calls. So it was a little frustrating from a lobbyist perspective, just because we can't be in the building to do sort of the minutia that we specialize in, which is the hallway conversations and the committee meetings and the face-to-face interaction with staff. But we made through, and obviously we had a good session. And so we're gonna, I think, operate in largely the same environment next year, come January. I think both chambers are working on a way to have floor sessions that are mostly in person. Obviously the House, it's a little bit more challenging because they have twice as many members, but the same amount of square footage. And so to do social distancing and all of that, they have to take a little bit more extraordinary measures to do that. I think all the committee hearings, at least in the Senate is concerned, and I'm assuming the House will follow suit, most of the committee hearings will be virtual as well. If there are opportunities for testimony from Jeff or any of you that come up next session, we can obviously alert you to those, but it won't involve us going to the Capitol building to testify in person in committee. It's going to be via Zoom. And then they're working on ways to get at least select members of the public to have face-to-face meetings, but given all of the necessary requirements in terms of vaccination, screening, and testing, I can't help but think that we're probably going to be largely virtual, even in the in the meetings with legislators that aren't in committee or aren't on the floor. We're probably going to be operating like this in a Zoom environment, unless something fairly drastic changes between now and January 10th. So that's kind of where we're at. And again, it's a supplemental budget year, so not a lot of major changes to the budget. The capital budget spent a lot of money last session in terms of projects, and not only the federal dollars that filtered through, but the state dollars as well. They spent a lot of money, so they left very little in terms of bonding capacity for the entire state. In fact, in terms of general obligation bonds, they left about 82 million to spend for the entire state. So you divide that 82 million by 49 legislative districts, and you can do the math. There's not a lot to go around, and a lot of that, remains to be seen how they're going to spend it. But we need to be sort of modest in our projections in terms of what our expectations are for capital budget dollars. In terms of the transportation side, we do have a couple of requests that are in the queue. But as you recall, last session, due to COVID and the budget restrictions, ridership was down, mass transit dollars were down, and they funded zero local projects in terms of member requests. We had been successful in recent years, as you recall, with the roundabout and some of the other transportation projects that we've secured in the past, but they did zero in terms of individual member request projects, but we have two in the queue. There's also a significant amount of federal money that just was passed over the weekend, if you recall, but it still sort of remains to be seen how that money is going to be spent at the state level. But it's, $8.6 billion has been earmarked for Washington State. The bulk of that will go to highways, bridges, and public transportation. But in terms of how that's distributed, it remains to be seen. And when I read highways, I read state highways. And so I don't know how much of that's going to trickle down to the local level. But we'll obviously be having a conversation about that when we get into session, and hopefully we can be a part of that and secure our share if they do divvy it out to the local communities. I think there also is several efforts in multiple fronts to do a transportation package. There were several fits and starts last session in terms of both chambers trying to put together a package for statewide transportation projects. I know Representative Fye, the chair of the House Transportation Committee, Senator Hobbs, the Senate Transportation Chair, are both working on their own projects. And I had a conversation with Representative Andrew Barkus today, the ranking Republican in the House Transportation Committee. He's putting together his own transportation package for consideration next session. So again, a lot of balls in the air there. It remains to be seen how those shake out. Obviously, there's a need for a statewide investment in our transportation system, but we need the legislature to come together and sort of figure out how they want to fund that package and where they get the votes, which is obviously the most important thing. So stay tuned on that. Not sure if they're going to get across the finish line in an election year. It's really difficult, but we'll see. I know there's a lot of smart people working on it. So that sort of sets the stage. And I guess I would turn it over to Jeff. I know he has a little bit of a universe of potential projects that we could pursue funding for. He and I talked today, and I think we do have, while it's not all doom and gloom, I think if we have modest expectations, I think we can secure funding for one or two of the projects and the priorities for the city heading into the session, as long as we get the groundwork done now and get those projects vetted and have good information that we can provide to our delegation. I think we still have a strong chance of getting at least something next session once they gavel in January. So Jeff, happy to turn it over to you, and then we can go through the list and talk pros and cons of all of them and go from there.
Thanks, Troy. Mayor and Deputy Mayor and council members, a couple of things that are on the list, well, several things that are on the list actually. And I also wanted to mention the AWC's 2022 legislative priorities as well, because I know that's something that council has been interested in the past. So based on conversations with council at various times, the major driver that we are looking for, again, that goes along with the latecomers agreement that we were successful at securing last year, is expanded sewer capacity at the satellite treatment plant. That, unfortunately, is a very expensive project, but we have broken it into several phases, and we'll be looking to talk to our delegation about potential this year or next year or somewhere into the future, but it's getting those projects on the pipeline or in the pipeline. The first phase, the preliminary design report's been completed. We also have a property acquisition for the pump station to eventually pump our sanitary sewer up to the satellite treatment plant. But then we get into the major pieces of it. Project surveying, design, and permitting is projected to be about $2.1 million. And then construction itself is expected to be about $8.4 million. The satellite plant up there off 101 was designed initially to be built in 3 phases. So each phase has a capacity projection of about 800,000 gallons. So once all 3 phases are complete, we'd be able to treat 2.4 million gallons up there. But as you can see, that those are extremely expensive projects. And as Troy has mentioned to you and to me, and several times, the state likes to be the last dollars in, not the first dollars. So we are going to have to invest some of our sewer funds into at least preliminary pieces of that, property acquisition being one of them. So we'll be looking at that, but those are all directed toward increasing that capacity in the areas that are primed for economic development in the future, both with our partners at the port and with the Federal Opportunity Zone. those are going to be drivers, economic drivers for the community for a long time to come. On to the other pieces and parts. A little bit smaller projects, one of which you have heard about before several years ago is the library deck repair at the library at 7th and Alder. That's been a project that everybody would love to see happen. We haven't had the resources to make that happen, and we are looking to get more firmed up numbers. The last estimate we had was done in, I believe, 2018. And as we all know, construction materials costs have gone through the roof over the last, particularly the last year, but even before that. So we'll be making sure we get firm numbers for that before we submit that information to Troy, so that we're not looking at a situation similar to what we had with the Civic Center parking lot out here, which is about to go to construction, by the way. Also, the other piece is looking at secured parking area for our police department and for our MACECOM partners downstairs. There is kind of a heightened sensitivity around protection for our police officers, particularly when they're exiting a door, they can't see on the other side of it. We've taken a few interim measures. It includes installing a monitor just inside the police station door on the outside here at 5th Street so they can see out and see what's going on out there before they step outside the door. Not that we expect anything to happen, but you hope for the best and plan for the worst. So we're looking at something like that going forward. And then the secured police department parking for employee vehicles and that kind of thing right across the street. A couple other policy pieces that I know several council members have mentioned to me before. One, continue advocating for jail, money for jail facilities. And then we have the AWC legislative priorities, which I wanted to run through really quickly with you. Pass the transportation package, which is something that Troy mentioned a little bit earlier. There's going to be several competing proposals, and we'll be involved in all of that. Ensure basic infrastructure funding, something that the federal dollars that were adopted and passed last week will certainly help with, but the aging infrastructure definitely needs to be kept up and be proactive about. And I think the biggest one that is a statewide funding issue important to all cities is the Transportation Benefit Funding Authority. And that is, there's many side issues that go along with that. The first being two different types, right? You can do car tabs, you can do the sales tax. Our city, our community has chosen to do the sales tax, but as you all know, that is for a limited time frame, 10 years. So that district will end in 2026, unless there are some policy changes surrounding that funding and the structure of that funding. And then we also have changes to the law enforcement use of force legislation that was passed last year. That's something that AWC is advocating for more clarity, just to make sure that our police officers and police officers around the state are aware and familiar, and there's no confusion with what the law requires. Some policy positions advocating for clarity around the Blake decision, so that there is dedicated funding for cities to administer diversion programs and medical assisted treatment programs and those types of things that are required. Changes to the Open Public Meetings Act, where cities have the authority to meet via Zoom or other means during an emergency like we're in now. I think over the last almost 2 years now, we've all gotten relatively comfortable with this format, even though we still don't like it, or at least I would prefer to be in person. But zoning mandates in the Growth Management Act changes, engage in GMA reform conversation, and make sure that the funding is available for these mandated Comprehensive Growth Management Act updates. that we're required to do every 8 years. And then, of course, the same couple of options that are on there just about every year, which is the revenue options. So changes to the state tax structure should not impact city's ability, or city's revenue authority rather. Property tax revisions to tie that to inflation rather than the 1% cap, and then culverts that with the state resolution as part of the overall culvert issue around the state, funding dedicated to helping cities address our culverts as well. So with that, I'm happy to open it up to any questions, and we can talk about priorities. Anything else you'd like to see added before we get started, that type of thing?
I see Joe has his hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, Jeff, well put together there to summarize everything that, I think we've been talking about for the last couple of years. And I just wanted to highlight the UGA utility aspect of things, utilities access. There's been several through the EDC. There's been several inquiries about businesses, commercial specifically locating in coming to Shelton and Mason County and wanting to be within the UGA, and limited access to 2 or 3 major utilities is usually one of the reasons why they choose not to. One of which is power. We don't have necessarily enough power to serve some of the needs that have come up, and obviously, that's not necessarily the city's goal to deliver that service, but it is integral in these discussions. So as we move on, I'd be interesting to talk more about capital improvements related to the PUD in the UGA to potentially support development. And I also just want to get that on the radar, and also just extending water and sewer utility within the UGA. Again, many of the commercial enterprise that is interested, they not interested in septic and well systems, and the implications with the WIRA decisions and other environmental impacts that brings. We're primed to bring them on as customers. We just lack the funds to kind of extend to them, right? And there are significant costs that would be difficult to bear on our residents here in the city. But the growth and development aspect of it, I think, is something we should be looking at pursuing and collaborating on with our partners at the other public utilities too. But I just want to get that in there as when we are asking for millions of dollars to bring sewer and potentially water outside of the city limits into the UGA. I'm confident that it would yield good results, especially now with Troy, your efforts in helping us dissolve the latecomers agreement. That's another huge thing, and we're just incredibly happy with how that all worked out, and appreciative of you, your staff, and Jeff for kicking that one through the goalposts. So yeah, just wanted to bring that up. Otherwise, I'm supportive from the policy perspectives that Jeff brought forward. There's definitely things that the city could benefit from, just reform wise, and being just somebody at the table here to give our point of view from Shelton. So again, thanks for the hard work and representing us well.
Kathy McDowell?
Yes. Troy, I want to thank you for all your hard work you and Jeff have done to get us to where we are. We're going to hang on to you for as long as we can. And every time the Civic Center parking lot I wanted to scream and yell and say high five on that one, because that is going to be so exciting to see that parking lot and that basketball court come to fruition next year. And so I'm proud of everything you've done for us, and thank you.
Well, I'm looking forward to it too. I think I put some personal money in the game there, Kathy, with the hoops and all that.
Yep.
So I can't wait to bring my son into town and shoot a little hoop.
Yep. Excited. Thanks.
Megan?
Hi there. Thanks again also for the work, Troy and Jeff as staff support. As we're talking about the growth management and what's happening with transportation on the state highway that runs through. I think it's gonna be, oh, my hand won't come down. Sorry, I keep trying to. There we go. As we're talking about transportation through that area of 101 and the impacts of the traffic through there, and our port is still listed on the growth opportunity for that annexation of another, regional airport as well. We have to figure out how to slow traffic down as we do growth in that space. So how can we start working with our congressional delegation now and with our state representatives so that not only are they understanding what's coming down this year, but we know that there's going to be additional transportation packages and infrastructure things that are going to come down for the next couple of years for sure. So how can we put ourselves in a space where we're getting planning dollars set up right now? We can get that, figured out. How do we also layer in, what it's going to take to get the expansion done with the utilities? But we've got to figure out, especially with a new congressperson, Sutherland, and the redistricting. I'd like to understand what impact that's going to have on decision making between North County and South County also, and what it's going to take for us to come together with the county to figure out what priority looks like, and as that airport is slotted to come in, what does it look like for the Highway 8 interchange? We know that there was some pre-planning that happened several years ago. We also know there was a flood that happened there also. I know that's a Thurston County issue, but what is the conversation that are happening right now across the board so that we can get ahead of this? Because Mason County is poised to grow and Shelton is right in the midst, right, of Kitsap and Thurston. And we've got to be able to help make these decisions and be able to put structure as far as our utilities in quickly, right? I mean, this is going to happen in the next 5 years. And that's the reality of where the timing is. Rural funds are going to flow. We might as well take advantage. And so we got to understand where, Congressperson Strickland is and where, is she going to promote her long-term relationships in North County? Or is she going to come down and meet with us again and figure out what this 101 infrastructure looks like for the sustainable future? Because we remember, don't forget who our airport, what that port is to all of our economic drivers in Washington State. That our port stands if that earthquake comes. So.
Yeah, we are definitely paying close attention to the airport expansion debate. Not participating at this point, but definitely paying attention to it. And as far as the redistricting goes, we are also paying really close attention to that to make sure that we know who our representative is, number one, but if it changes. So once all those decisions are made, we will have an idea of where to go. Definitely brainstorming those issues.
Just to add, Jeff, the redistricting plans, I think the final negotiated plans are due at the end of the month. And then the legislature has to sort of ratify that come January, but they are limited in terms of what they can only make minor tweaks to what the commission comes up with. So I too am waiting to see who our congressional delegation is going to be. And frankly, just the legislative map is going to have a big impact on my world statewide. I would point out also that a couple of things. One, the infrastructure package that was just passed, it's $4.7 billion for Washington State, and that's over a 5-year period. So they're not going to hand it all out tomorrow. I think that we just need to position ourselves to be able to receive that money if we have a well thought out plan. I do know that Mason County has brought on a lobbyist, and looking forward to partnering with them too. Deb Munguia, I think, is who they hired, and she's a pro, she's a friend, and looking forward to partnering up with the county because these are some big decisions. And then I can't help but think that some of this federal money could go to improve that infrastructure, Highway 8. Obviously, selfishly, as somebody who lives in that neck of the woods. It'd be nice to clear up that bottleneck, but that has a big impact on us too up here in Shelton. So it's definitely on our radar. We need to be ready for when those funds start to flow. So it's a good list.
And by the way, let's not forget, everybody, that, you know, we're running quickly out of room for logistics and warehousing along I-5. And we already know Amazon hit Bremerton, and we need a way to help move goods. It's part of our role and responsibility as government, you know, to help grow and support economic development. It's part of our job to make sure that our legislators understand that we have got to open up these bottlenecks that have been closed for way too long for our rural areas to be able to thrive. Mason County cannot keep exporting talent. We have got to be able to have the ability to retain talent, grow our own, and be able to bring pride back to who we are and show we're in the middle of a rebrand process, you know, help us with that and keep us moving with the latecomer stuff, right? Super exciting. So thanks again. I appreciate, thanks again for working on this stuff. And I know it's super challenging, and especially with changing landscapes and stuff, but I look forward to working with you on the flip side, because I'm on the way out too.
Eric, do you remember what you were going to say?
Oh, I'm not muted. I just want to thank Troy again and staff for the hard work and what you did for us last year. And I have heard you say lean before, and you and the 35th have come through for us. So I'm hoping that will happen again. I think that if it's going to be a lean year, the TBD is going to be, the language in the TBD would be huge. Not just for us, for every city in the state that is going to be losing funds for this and have to use general fund money for roads. So I think that would be huge. It wouldn't cost the state anything. So I think that is probably going to be our number one priority if it's a lean year. But I've heard you say lean before, and you've come through.
That's correct.
But thank you again, and the 35th district, for all the hard work they do for us.
Yeah, that's, hey, Troy, this is Kevin. I don't know if I'll see you again in session here or not, but if I do, fine. If I don't, it's been very good working with you, and I hope to see all these projects come to fruition in the future. I will be down there bugging Jeff all the time.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, Mr. Mayor, and obviously I'll be frequenting your establishment for a cup of coffee.
Atta boy.
Dropping off the kids. So yeah,
All
we'll
right.
see each other in the future for sure.
All right, sounds good. All right, any more for Jeff or Troy? If not, we'll move on. All right.
Thanks, Troy.
Thanks, everyone. I'll probably just log off unless you need me for the second item. So
You're good.
I don't
Thanks.
think so.
we'll be in touch. All right, everybody, stay safe. We'll
Good
talk
night.
soon. Appreciate it.
Okay, our last study item is regarding NPDES, Education and Outreach. City Engineer Ken Gill will start off with a few comments and then introduce Barbara Atkins from the Mason Conservation District. Share more detail. Ken?
Good evening, council and everybody. It's good to see you in Zoomville. And I'm excited because anytime as a city engineer, we can get your city manager to talk about expanding your sewer treatment plant. That's the best, there's nothing better than that. So that's music to my ears. But tonight we're going to talk about some cleaner water. We're going to talk about stormwater. So as you know, Shelton is a new phase 2 permittee. And last year we took a leap forward. We adopted the current DOE manual. This year we're going to tackle the public education and outreach portion of that permit. And there's no one better to do it than Mason Conservation District. They've been part of our community for years and been doing this type of work. It's so much when Brooke Kiltz was looking through our files, we already have an agreement with them to do it. So for previous work. So I want to give you a quick bio for Barbara and Evan, and then let them roll with their PowerPoint presentation and tell you about the things that they're going to do for us. One thing that's unique about this is that recall Shelton received capacity grants. We used the last capacity grant to fund much of our rate study that council's passed and is implementing. And Ecology also is funding this work with Mason Conservation District. They are in the process of providing us a grant for $50,000. So Barbara is a certified planner. She works for Mason Conservation District as a special projects manager and is currently working on the City of Shelton Green Stormwater Infrastructure Grant. Barbara previously worked for Mason County as the Community Development Director. So, and also want to make sure and introduce you to Evan Bowder. He's a lifelong resident of Mason County. He went to Western Washington, and he was recently reported as the district manager for the Mason Conservation District. He's been with the district for more than 12 years, and he feels honored and privileged to be supporting a healthy environment, natural resources industries, and working in the community where he's born and raised. So I will let them roll, and please listen to all the good things that they've got coming up next in Shelton.
Thanks, Ken. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. Again, my name's Evan Bowder, District Manager at the Mason Conservation District. Since I'm not sure how familiar you all are with the district, I figured I would just kick us off with a brief overview of who we are. We're technically a special purpose district like a fire department or a drainage district, irrigation district. We're 100% non-regulatory, and we provide technical and financial assistance to landowners in effort to improve land use in support of natural resource issues and industries. We work under the Washington State Conservation Commission, and we receive very little discretionary funding. And so we operate a lot like a nonprofit. We work mostly with project-based grant funding. We currently have 18 staff and we're growing. And we are currently managing close to 50 grants and contracts. Our areas of focus include clean water, that's both stormwater within environments like the city, but also a large focus in working with agricultural producers and keeping the water clean for drinking water, shellfish, habitat, you name it. We have a pretty robust habitat program that largely focuses around salmon recovery. We have a youth and adult environmental education program, a forestry program that includes 2 foresters working with private residents on forest management plans and forestry issues. We manage the county's voluntary stewardship program, and we also manage the RIA 14 lead entity for salmon recovery, of which the city is one of the initiating governments there. So with that, I just wanted to give you a brief overview so you know who we are, where we're coming from. Happy to answer questions about that, but if there's no questions, then I'd like to hand it over to Barbara for the agenda item tonight.
Thank you, Evan. I'm going to share my screen now. I think. Am I sharing it?
I got it.
Yep.
Okay.
You might have to hit present though, Barbara.
Yeah, Ken warned me, make sure my connection's good, and it's good, but my computer ain't what she used to be. So, as Ken mentioned, we are proposing to help the city with the outreach and education portion of your NPDES stormwater permit. The permit has structural requirements in it. I think it has legislative requirements in it. And it has this education and outreach portion, which really is more than education, because what these requirements are asking of you is not only to educate your community, but to change the behavior of your community. So in a nutshell, the requirements are asking the city to target an audience, target the behavior you want to see changed in that audience, find a way to change it, and then measure whether what you're doing is actually working. Beyond that, they also want the community to have more opportunities to participate in stormwater mitigation activities, know more about it, and be able to participate in more just overall environmental stewardship opportunities that are out there. Get them more connected with their environment. So the first bullet here says build general awareness of local water quality, straight out of your permit. The requirements give you two groups to choose from. You can choose from professionals, which are your developers, your contractors, your planners, your builders, your building inspectors, your real estate individuals, people that are more in the professional realm when it comes to stormwater mitigation, or the general public, including school-age children. We have chosen to go the route of the general public and youth because we are already in that arena. We already work with the general public, and we're already in the school system working with different grades. In this particular aspect of it, we would be working with the Shelton School District in the 5th and 6th grade classes, because I think that that's probably the age that is going to be more understanding of this message, and they have more opportunities to go out into the field and participate in activities where they could learn more from it. And you know, we also query the students at the end of lessons that we give, and we do surveys to find out what they've actually learned. So you need the older students to be able to actually absorb the information and regurgitate it to you. So the methods, the best management practices that the permit is asking you to implement in order to change the behavior, we have chosen to look at tree retention and natural landscaping. And both of those are BMPs that are in the permit, as well as in the 2019 Ecology Manual. So they're completely accepted by ecology as BMPs to mitigate stormwater. Implement methods to evaluate effectiveness. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but that's basically the put this plan in motion and then determine whether your plan worked. And then promoting opportunities for the residents to get involved in stewardship and the decision-making process. So that the district has several events throughout the year, which have kind of morphed because of COVID. We used to get out a lot more. You can see in the picture here that this is the this is Forest Festival Field Day, and the kids would come out by busloads. And we have people from the district, people from Green Diamond, people from all over, and the kids would go from station to station and learn about the trees and learn about I don't know, I think they learned about bugs. They learned about all kinds of things out there. We haven't done this in a while, and I'm not sure when it's going to come back. But this is one opportunity. We also do Orca Recovery Day, where we invite the community to come out and help us restore salmon habitat for Orca Recovery. A peer-to-peer event, which is going on at the Port of Allen, I think this Saturday. We have people come out in the evening, and we have divers that scoop up little critters from the water and bring it out, and the kids are all kind of gathered around, and they get to see what is living under the pier. So within this element, we propose to provide information to the city to put on your website, help create a website that's a little more user-friendly, provides more information about what the permit is, what the community's role in it is, notify folks of all the different events. That is also an opportunity that there's another portion of it, this decision-making process. Now that part of your plan wants the community to get more involved in your policies and in your legislative decisions when it comes to stormwater fees, and so forth. Now, we can't organize or host your public meetings, but when these meetings come up, we can combine your meetings with information that we are already providing to the community to try to make sure that we're reaching more people, to get them more involved. So the tree retention and tree planting. We picked this because this is something that we have done for 2 years now. We have the grant that that Ken mentioned, the green stormwater infrastructure grant that we have from the Department of Ecology. And what we did in this grant is we provided free trees, basically. We gave vouchers to citizens just in the city of Shelton to plant these trees in their yards because they are effective in not only providing shade for their homes and increasing, you know, the aesthetic value of their homes, but they also retain stormwater on their property. The picture here is the event we had in 2020. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see that little tiny person at the end, but these trees were huge. They were huge trees. They were beautiful. They were valued over $100. And we really pushed for folks to take advantage of this opportunity and put these trees in their yard and start getting some of that back into the areas where these lawns are kind of vacant. So we can use this as one of the behavioral change methods. You can see that there's some change metrics because we have to measure whether or not you're actually getting people to participate in this management practice. We can look at the baseline of the last 2 years, and we can look at the numbers moving forward. You can see we've got a couple of things listed here: number of applicants, number of trees planted, and this will likely change as we move forward. These were ideas that, you know, at the outset, to the examples of ways that we can kind of measure what's happened in the past. We can amp up the campaign promoting the tree event, and then look to see if we're making a difference with the campaign that we've chosen to move forward with. The National Yard Care, I don't know if any of you know, but the district does have a native plant sale every year. What we would propose here is we would add to the plants that we already provide more plants that can incorporate into your yard that's drought resistant and pest resistant and can handle a lot of water, that would reduce the need for watering, would reduce the need for pesticides, all in an effort to control the runoff that's leaving their yards, to not overwater, to not have plants that require a lot of water. We could put together, I don't know, like we were thinking maybe like starter kits of different kinds of plants that people could purchase a package, take it home, put it in their yards, and start converting their landscape into something that's more native and requires less care. The picture that you see here, this is Whitney. She used to be our AmeriCorps volunteer. The district gets an AmeriCorps volunteer every year, and these volunteers have educational backgrounds. They come in and they help Jen Thurman Williams, who is our outreach coordinator, go into the school. So we have Jen, who has been with the district for more than 20 years. And then every year she brings in one of these folks that just generally got out of college and they want to go into the field of education. So they bring their expertise. I think Whitney was into pollinators, and our new AmeriCorps person, his name is Logan, and I think he's into botany. But they bring their own special twist and they go into the schools with us and they relate really well to the kids. And again, these metrics, these can will probably change as we get a better idea of what we're doing. So talking about measuring, community-based social marketing is something that's actually mentioned in the requirements to use this or something similar to it. And it's basically 5 steps. As I already talked about, is what behavior do you want to change? What are the barriers to people actually doing this behavior? And what are the benefits to it? Come up with a strategy to get rid of whatever those barriers are as best as you can, and to increase or make people aware of what the benefits are. Then put that strategy in place and monitor whether it worked. It sounds kind of simple, but there's lots of books on community-based social marketing. It can be quite complicated, but it doesn't need to be. I think as long as we understand the gist of what we're doing, it would work out just fine. You can see here, there's a couple of pictures of the little kids with that touch tank of all the little critters they scooped out of the water. They all get an opportunity to touch them and look at them. And I think they're all returned to the water safely. And then these are Orca Day events with people coming out volunteering to plant native vegetation to increase the salmon habitat. And it looks like we do Twitter, we do Instagram, we do Facebook. We also have newsletters and we do email blasts. So we are finding a lot of ways to make sure that we communicate with the public and get the information out there as best as we can. And we can pass this information on to the city, link it up with your website, and also include your events in with our materials to make sure that we're hitting everybody. We are already doing some activities in the city under the grant that Evan mentioned and Ken mentioned. For some reason, the slides, it didn't stick. During rehearsal, it stuck. Okay, so in 2020, we teamed up with the Snohomish Conservation District. They also had a similar stormwater grant. And for some reason, they had they were going to do some rain gardens somewhere that fell through. So they reached out to us, Mason County, and said, do you want some rain gardens? So in 2020, we installed 6 rain gardens in the Bordeaux neighborhood. Snohomish paid for the gardens, we paid for the plants and helped them with the engineering. And then we decided to use our grant to do that again this year. And we put in 7 rain gardens in the Mountain View neighborhood. Ecology was quite impressed that we managed to get 7 houses in one neighborhood to do this. And these are a couple of the before and after pictures. They turned out pretty. You can tell I was out in the beginning in August when everything was dead. And then everything came back to life and they looked really nice. We're also doing a depaving and revegetation at the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization Center. I don't know if you can see my arrow, but all of the pavement between the sidewalk and where their recreation area is has been removed all the way down to the side. And we are in the process, absolutely, almost as we speak. I've been standing out there all day today, of pulling out all the base gravel, putting in some very nice 50-50 pro soil compost mix. And we will be using this planting plan that our forester has put together. We have 2 foresters at the district now, that he has put together to create a vegetation plan that will serve a couple of different purposes. The center wants more privacy for their patients. They want to block the noise that is coming from that area. Sometimes it gets a bit colorful if you're standing out there. And to prevent people from being able to go from the sidewalk to that activity area and interact with the patients. So we're going to put some stuff out there that's not very friendly to walk through, stuff with pointy leaves and some pretty big trees and some nice vegetation out there that will not only add to what the center needs, but it's also part of a stormwater grant to remove pavement that doesn't need to be there anymore and improve water infiltration. And then here's the budget and the schedule that we put together. The dates go out to 2024, which I believe, if I understood Ken correctly, is when this permit ends. A lot of the events are scheduled around the school year. They're scheduled around planting season. They're combined with the events that we already have so that we can continue to stay in the same timeline. There's certain times you buy plants and certain times that you don't. And then of course, there's some breaks in what we're doing to stop and go back and evaluate whether or not what we're doing is actually working. Okay, I'll stop now. If there's there's any questions or if Evan wants to add anything that I might have missed.
I don't think so. I think we'll just open it up for questions and see what folks might need clarification on.
Joe, were you first or Megan?
I think Megan was. Go ahead,
All right.
Councilman.
Go ahead, Megan.
A quick question around your education and outreach program. Are there opportunities for materials and outreach in Spanish as well, dual language?
Yeah, and actually your permit requires that you put everything is bilingual. So we will be working with that. That is an undertaking that is not as easy as you would think.
No,
Find
it's not.
people that want to do that and that can do that. I think they charge by the page. But yes, that is something that we will need to work with you on to figure out the best way to find some sort of translator, because your web page needs to be in 2 languages, and there is a little button on there that's not working. You should probably email your IT people. But yes, we do need to have everything bilingual.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Hey, Joe.
Thanks, Mayor. I think maybe my question is more oriented towards Jeff and staff on this. So public outreach. I think what the Conservation District has provided is a great plan. However, I'm very concerned about public outreach to business and the commercial entities. There are a lot of things within the NPDES permit that stormwater pollution prevention plans and permit requirements for certain generators in managing stormwater on their properties that hadn't necessarily been there in the past, or hadn't at least maybe been enforced and managed in the past. And I think there's still a lot of questions as to what these new permit guidelines mean, specifically when it comes to responsibilities. Even residential neighborhoods, homeowners. What are my responsibilities as a homeowner to manage stormwater on my property, and where does the city in nexus there, right? It's good to educate in the schools. I think it's always great to continue to talk about clean water at a younger age, and make these get this knowledge out there sooner. But I'm more concerned, I guess, with what the permit impacts are going to mean, like I said, especially to the commercial and residential, type customers. I'm just curious if what tie-in does this have, or will this have with that effort?
So a lot of the same information that is used throughout the program. One of the reasons why we chose to go this route is we unfortunately don't have the opportunity often to talk with school children about various city programs, whether it's stormwater or whether it's GMA specific, complete streets, those types of things, where the Conservation District does, but also we have the opportunity to interact with those professionals on an almost daily basis, the ones that Ms. Adkins mentioned before, the real estate folks, the developers, the builders, the contractors. And in those personal interactions, we can definitely make sure that those folks are aware of what the permit requires and why. It's a whole lot easier to just point at the state and say, we're doing this because the state made us do it, rather than helping people understand why we're doing this. And it's, for the health of Oakland Bay, which is not only an asset for our partners at our shellfish growing partners, but also a big economic development attractor. So when you start tying those things together as we're conversing with people either at the counter or the phone or through email, helping everybody understand the more global picture in our community and why we're doing those things. We're best suited to do that because we're comfortable doing it. We do it all the time. I think it would be amazing if we got an opportunity to talk to more kids about Growth Management Act or about even municipal government careers. But we just don't have that opportunity often and hardly at all now with the pandemic that we're currently dealing with.
Can I make a comment as well here? I just wanted to point out that although engaging with the youth through the school, our youth education programs in the schools is a part of this scope, a large portion or a majority of this scope is actually engaging with campaigns around these BMPs with adults and just general public within the city community. And so a large part of what we would actually be doing is around, trying to help the homeowners or the property owners understand the importance of native vegetation in the community, tree retention, those kinds of things, and then trying to establish some change in behavior and document that.
It's good to hear. Yeah, it's just getting the average resident to understand what a best management practice is and why it's important, right? I think that's great. It sounds like a great plan to me. Like I said, I just wanted to make sure that we were keeping a focus on, what I think is probably the thing that we're going to hear more about, which is what those impacts are to industry. Because it is at the end of the day, it is impactful, but I also do recognize it's important to realize that when the rain falls, we have to do something with the runoff and manage that. And teaching that at a young age, absolutely agree with you on that. That'd be great. And to have a partnership with the Conservation District on top of that, I think it's awesome. So thank you.
Kathy McDowell?
Yeah, I just, that was a real good presentation. Thank you very much. I'm encouraged with the thought of maybe getting more of the rain gardens in Shelton, not only to businesses, but residents. I think it's important that do one neighborhood like Mountain View, but bring it down in downtown where we have a large majority of people passing through. And so I am 100% for putting in these rain gardens and cleaning our water so that it's halfway clean, pretty clean when it hits the treatment plant. So thank you for your presentation. And if you want to use a residential yard to put a experimental rain garden in, hey, you can come over to my house.
We will. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I don't see any more hands. Any more comments for Jeff or? Okay, thank you very much, Barbara
Thank you.
and Evan.
Thank you. I'm going to put my email in the chat if anyone wants to follow up with questions or other district related activities or issues.
All right.
Thanks all.
We're at new items for discussion, anyone? If not, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned at 7:04.